The average cost of a ransomware attack today is $5.3 million. This is already a pretty large increase from last year, and we're only seeing this increase, and the consequences are becoming more and more damaging. Something that we found that's very interesting is that 61% of these breaches started with SaaS applications. Now, you hear a lot of noise about SaaS applications, about the cloud, but it's really, really important to understand how we got here. So that's why the team here at HYCU, we've decided to tackle this specific problem and get to the root of the cause. So with that, I'm Andy Fernandez. I'm on the product team at HYCU, and I'm privileged to introduce Subbiah to the team. Subbiah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Subbiah Sundaram. I run products for HYCU based out of our Boston office, and great to talk with you guys.
So Subbiah, let's talk about how we got here. We are now talking about SaaS applications being number one target, number one source of these breaches and these attacks. How have things changed in the last decade and the last 2 decades? Let's talk a little bit about where we were 15 years ago and where we are today, Subbiah. How have we gotten here?
That's a great question, Andy. If you look at it, pretty much a lot of the people who are listening today have grown up in a traditional IT infrastructure, in an IT environment, right? If you look at it 20 years ago or like 25 years ago, it used to be just people had their data centers. They used to say, I have 1 data center, 2 data centers, and they used to brag about the number of data centers they had. Then over time, that's when about 15 years earlier, like about SaaS, almost 20 years earlier, like Salesforce started picking up and people started talking about a lot more about SaaS. That's when public cloud started taking on, right? Then as you know from public cloud grew so much, like AWS, and started with AWS S3, and it grew so much. And then it started having all the SaaS. Salesforce, and then now, if you look at in an average company, there are 217 SaaS applications. People think, really? Even a young company like us, we did our own inventory, and we were reaching almost there. That's the kind of thing which customers have. But if you look at it, like to your question, Andy, we got to take a step back and look at why did people get there? At the end of the day, from business perspective, what is that are we trying to get? We want speed of growth. That's what every companies do. What does technology do? It helps the company grow, right? Helps the company grow efficiently. That's the other side, right? So what customers or IT, people in technology, people using technology are always looking for is that how do I leverage technology to accelerate growth? That's the key thing. So anything which slows down their adoption of technology, they want to change, right? And that's where people started from on-prem, they went into cloud because it gave them the agility. From cloud, which they're using just the compute and storage, they started using all the services in the cloud because that gave them the agility, the next level. Then people said, why all the just infrastructure stuff? Why can't we use the entire application? That's when people started doing the SaaS. So that's the next thing, right? It's a natural evolution, it's there. One thing we probably have to realize is that this is not going to stop, this is just going to expand, and that's the power of SaaS. And this is just not us talking as we talk to customers, as we talk to partners and analysts. This is a consistent theme from customers.
No, I really appreciate that context, Subbiah. And one of the dumb analogies that I have always is really helping folks understand that the real big difference here too is when you were running everything on-prem, all of your applications, all of your intelligence, all of your data, your critical IP, your PCI, PII, it was all in a castle. It was in your data center. You could see it, you could touch it, you can have full control over it, around who has physical access to it and who has digital access to it as well. But today, you're not using SharePoint server. Your repositories aren't on-prem. It's no longer Active Directory on-prem. All of these things are now Microsoft 365, Entra ID, it's Jira on Atlassian Cloud, it's Salesforce on the cloud. Everything now lives somewhere else with somebody else being able to have access to it. So we go from this castle to an entire world where your data is distributed in silos at the responsibility of different other organizations. So really this is a massive, massive discussion point around third-party risk. And the reason that I bring up third-party risk, Subbiah, is because if you go to the news every 5 minutes, there's a new article on third-party risk. I think the elephant in the room, everybody knows what's going on with CrowdStrike and what's happened with that element. What happened to Delta Airlines with the amount of data loss and disruption to the business. But that is just one scenario. There are thousands of third parties, thousands of SaaS applications. Each of them come with their own level of risk from a third-party management perspective. Subbiah, tell us a little bit about why this happens. This is not a bad thing about the cloud or SaaS. It's just the reality of technology and humans. But give us a little bit more context there.
Absolutely. So if you think about, Andy, when we used to run all the applications in on-prem world, right? A single virtual machine or single couple of database servers together made up an entire application. So the probability of error is within that particular one. Now, to take advantage of applications running in the cloud, either you're leveraging all the public cloud services or running a pure SaaS outside. To use that particular service, you're using so many other services in the middle. It's a very interconnected world. And many of our customers and partners and prospects, I'm sure you guys have heard of all the microservices and people talk about. When people think of microservices, they think it's some complicated stuff. No, in reality, all the one which was everything tied within the data center right now, you split up. When you split up, you have so many different components. And how do you make that work together is a critical thing, right? And that's where people are leveraging all the different services to connect the dots. To leverage the best of the applications, you have to use all of this. What does this really mean? And that's what you're alluding to, right, Andy, right? So the key thing is that to make that use, people might be thinking, I'm using Salesforce. But in reality, you're just not using Salesforce. Salesforce, in turn, is made up of hundreds of different services. To get to Salesforce, you're using lots of different services. You're using identity management service. You're going through your VPN service, your firewall service. So many different things make up this entire thing come together. While sometimes we think magic, it's there happening, but behind the scene, all this have together. Why does this really matter? When you have so many of these components, all of them have to work together. That's why, as Andy was alluding to, the third-party services, right? It's not third-party risk. It's just all these services come together, have to make life happen. And that's why it's very, very critical for customers to have a holistic view on what are the services they are using, that's number one, and how it all comes together. Because to understand risk, you have to understand the entire picture first.
Oh, that's a perfect example with Salesforce and what people consider microservices. It sounds like a buzzword, but that's the reality of what it is. But based on what we know that we've drastically moved away from just being a world where all of your data is in your control, right? We were every single day, from the production of this video to the service that I order to get home, is based on third parties, is based on cloud and SaaS applications. So we, the team, Subbiah, myself, the team at HYCU, we've decided to really tackle the root of the problem. Why is there a perception of risk? Why are these attacks happening? Why are organizations not being able to recover their data? And so what we did is we've created the State of SaaS Resilience Report. And what this meant was that we worked with a team and we went and interviewed hundreds of IT decision makers, IT leaders from VPs, CIOs, administrators, who really are the ones at the front of the battle here, trying to understand exactly how to protect their organizations. We interviewed folks from the US, from the UK, from Germany, from France, from Japan, from Singapore, all over the world, to truly get an understanding of what is the SaaS problem. Are we resilient? What are the things that we need to do to get better, both as industry leaders, as technology companies, but also as users of these technologies? So with that, we're going to unveil a couple of the surprises that we found from this survey. And this is something that Subbiah and myself, we were pretty shocked when we saw as well, but it's really critical to understand.
So Andy, I just want to add to one thing what you were just saying, Andy, just to make sure, give people more context, right? A lot of times when people think of state of SaaS, they think, oh, let me go ask my customer base. That's one way to do it. One of the things we realized was that it's just not about always talking to your same internal, what they call it, the closed circle, and keep talking about the same thing, right? That is not the right thing. So we wanted to talk to a broad set of people, not just our customers, but the broader set of IT, as Andy said, from different parts of the world, different roles and responsibility in the organization to get a true picture. That is something I just want to highlight as something we did.
No, thank you so much for the context, Subbiah. That's very critical for us to understand. And let's talk about the first thing that we found from this sample, from these groups of IT leaders. And this was one that was very surprising to me, because if you're watching this video, you heard Subbiah talk about HYCU and talk about at HYCU how we are using dozens and dozens of SaaS applications and cloud services to deliver and drive our product and our business. Now, what we found in the survey and in this assessment was that the IT leaders here that reported and answered this question, when asked how many SaaS applications are you using or is your organization using? And their answer was 22.
And it's just one thing we should probably ask here, do a fun thing for people listening to this particular one. You might want to just pause for a second and think about how many do you believe in your organization truly are you really using it. So, because it's a good fun exercise. Go ahead, Andy.
No, absolutely. I guarantee you that if you are in a mid-sized organization, the number that you have, it's most likely 10x, and we'll show you why. The assessment that we've done, these IT leaders said they have 22 SaaS applications. But when we look at so many other surveys, and when we look at the organizations and customers that we talk to every single day, we know for a fact that the average mid-sized organization has over 200 SaaS applications. Why is there such a disparity? Why is there such a gap in understanding how many SaaS applications we have today and what are we actually using in our organization? Subbiah, what's your perspective? Why is this such a gap?
It's an interesting question you ask, Andy. I always tell the story to people when it's a real incident. I was talking to a friend of mine who was a CIO for our organization, right? I just called him one day as we were launching our solution. I said, hey, can you tell me how many SaaS you guys use in your organization? He, in his initial enthusiasm, he said, oh, we use probably like 5 or 6. I said, wow, man, you must have really done a great job of controlling it. Then within 5 minutes of our conversation, he remembered 13 other SaaS which he was using. I didn't prompt him, he started telling. If you think about it, the reason is that day to day we use so many in our company, but we don't think of it. Even as an individual user listening to this particular audience, if you pause this video and look for yourself as how many SaaS you use, you would be surprised at the number you end up doing. Easily in a given day, you will easily touch, at least personally, you will at least touch 10 to 15 SaaS applications personally. As an organization, it's much, much larger. That's the 200 plus which Andy was mentioning, right? That's the true reality. This is just not a number from random from survey. This is something which we truly see in our customer base as we talk to. For example, one of our customers, Red Sox, right? You guys probably know, some of you are baseball fans, I'm sure love Red Sox. They have over 900 SaaS applications they end up using. So you can imagine the criticality. This is just not a one-off. You might think, oh, that might be extreme case. I personally, of other companies, large IT organizations, things like that, who easily tell me, one company told me they have 650, the other one told me they have 800. It is a large number, and that's what people typically have. The main reason is that the good thing about SaaS is that at the end of the day, we started with, let's start with, why do people use SaaS? To accelerate the business. So people are looking for every opportunity to actually make it better. And there are so many beautiful applications coming up to make your organization better. And that's why people are using it. You cannot stop it because right now it's so easy to use it. And the thing about beauty of SaaS is the simplicity they try to deliver. And that is what you see, Andy, as you know, the rate of explosion is quite high.
But Subbiah, you see this all the time, even in conversations with me. I'm always, we have standard applications that we use, but I'm always showing you amazing things that we can do with other SaaS 100%. Applications. Like Subbiah, look at this diagram that I can make in Miro. Or Subbiah, look at how I'm able to put a database within Notion immediately. What I'm finding too is that the personalization of SaaS, of being able to say, I'm going to build the perfect thing for X person, is only incentivizing everybody to adopt these SaaS. And as you know, all it takes is a company credit card or sometimes even a personal credit card, and I can start using this. And it gets sticky in the organization. And guess what? IT wasn't part of any of that conversation. So that shows you how quickly an organization can spin up new services. And on the other hand, how quickly you can introduce new risk if you're not handling responsibly. And to Subbiah's point, SaaS applications have brought us flexibility, personalization, and technology we've never seen before. But with great power comes great responsibility. And that's what we really need to talk about now, Subbiah. When we looked at the survey, another very shocking response and data point was that we found, like I told you at the beginning of the video, that 61% of breaches have SaaS as the source of the attack. Subbiah, when you think about this is very staggering. Why is this happening? Why are cyber criminal syndicates or even individual hackers, why are they targeting SaaS applications? Can you put yourself in the mind of somebody exploiting an organization? Why SaaS?
Absolutely, Andy. So if you think about it, in the world today, there are over 35,000 SaaS applications, right? And that's number one data point. The second thing, as people know, who actually buys SaaS? There are some procured by the general IT, but there are a lot of things used by the individual users, right? Within the organization, it starts out in a small, within the marketing team, within the sales team, and so on, and they start expanding it quite a bit. Why does this apply here? You might be wondering, why am I talking about it? The reason is that not all of them are tied to your single sign-on systems, number one. Number two, because to keep the cost low, sometimes people think, oh, they take shortcuts and they say, why don't I actually create one account where all of us can share this particular one? While it might sound like a great thing in the short term, but the risks go higher. That's one of the reasons, as a hacker, they look at, what do hackers do? They look for the weakest point, right? They don't have to go for a big thing. All they need is a point of entry. And what's the point of entry? The weak link. And what is a weak link? People, when they start sharing passwords, what do? Oh, they'll write it on paper, send it in email, send it in this one. That's the easiest thing for the hacker. And not only that, a lot of times they keep the data simple so that it's easy to share. All that helps the hacker get in very, very easily. And not only that, once they are there, then it becomes a lot more easier to get into the organization. That's why you see over 61%, as Andy said earlier, and you see in this one, over 61% of the attacks happen through the SaaS.
Subbiah, that's a perfect explanation for this issue. One of the things that I notice, even in behavior, take things that are sitting outside of IT but are so critical, something like GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket. Subbiah, how many things are people adding to this? Not just source code, but also all of their configuration files. They shouldn't be doing this, but even sometimes keys. And all of this critical data that is sitting in a SaaS application that is generally not in the purview of IT. So this just shows you one example. But take even a survey SaaS, an application like Typeform, MailChimp, all these things. These are HR or marketing surveys. This should be something very simple and straightforward. They're amazing applications. But when people send surveys, sometimes they send out extremely personal information, especially if it's an HR survey. Yet, is IT the one monitoring that survey account? No. So these are just some of the examples around not necessarily, just because it's outside of IT doesn't necessarily mean it's not business critical or contains very, very important information. But Subbiah, let's talk about the next finding in this. And this is not surprising. Out of all the things that we saw, this is the least shocking thing in the entire survey. And it was that 75 of these respondents said that there was an issue in the data or in the configurations of their identity access management service. Think Active Directory or now Entra ID, Okta, or any other IDPs as well, that this would bring a severe damage to the organization. Subbiah, from your perspective, let's talk a little bit about IAM as an entry point and why that information is so critical and why are so many people going after it?
That's a great point, Andy. Like, as you were saying, 75% of the respondents actually responded this way, right? If you think about it, why did they actually say that? Earlier, when we were, like, as Simon Taylor, our CEO, lovingly likes to call it, when you were within the data center, you can actually put a guard, theoretically, there, and control, monitor everything what's actually happening. Theoretically, if it's a smaller one and a larger one, you can put a bunch of them, and you can still do that. But imagine right now you're going to use 217 SaaS applications, just a mid-sized organization, not big, right? Can you put 217 people monitoring 217 things? That it's just practically not possible in an organization, just the 217. Imagine when you have 900. It just is, scale doesn't help you there. How do you actually solve this problem? How do you control this, right? That's where identity management, actually the IAMs of the world, Oktas, Entra's IDs, or things like that have come into picture, right? Because now you got a guard. One is not just guard who enters the information, like as you would expect. The other one is that what can they do? Because when you have so many people, you also have to control that. And not only that, when you have so many different services, you have to see who gets to see what service, when they can use it, how they can use it. All that becomes a factor. So there are quite a large problem here. That's why companies like Okta have been so successful, and same thing with Microsoft, that Entra have been so successful in helping customers with this problem. If you think about it, the reason is that they have huge, all these, I just mentioned two of these solutions, there are other solutions too. One of these, but these two are the big gorillas in the space. What have they done? They have allowed the customers to adopt all these services at scale. Now let's look at the other way around. Why is that important? Because these control the entire infrastructure which the customer runs, entire SaaS, PaaS, TBaaS, IaaS, their on-prem infrastructure, everything is controlled by this thing. That's why it becomes extremely critical. If you lose data in it, you lose control of your entire infrastructure, or you'll have a downtime quite a lot. So that's why it's very, very critical. It's almost, as people all we lovingly call it, the keys to the kingdom. It's the entry point. It's the controller. So you better take care of that particular one and make sure you have a good copy of it in case something bad happens. You're also always be able to get back to a good state. That's very critical. For all of the reasons I just mentioned right now, identity management is such a critical piece in an organization. So it's extremely important for customers to have a way to preserve the data, what they have, how much effort they put in. Please make a copy of it. Have it in such a way that you can recover the data in case something goes bad. People might remember things like MGM. Anything bad happens, you should be able to get it up and running.
Subbiah, you've used this example all the time, and that's a very valuable example, which is just referring to it as the keys to the kingdom, right? That's how critical identity access management is. It's how critical the services that you use. So it's no shock to find that in the survey as well. But here is where we start moving away from things that we really understand, which is organizations have a lot of SaaS applications. IAM is critical to that. But where we start seeing the gap now is understanding, well, whose responsibility is it? There are so many times where we have customer conversations, even with friends, and we're talking about a specific application. And I ask them, well, hey, what happens if you delete that? Well, they go, well, I'll call the provider and they'll get that data back for me. And that is exactly the type of response that we found in the Resilience Report. And it's 41% of these respondents rely on the vendor to protect and recover their data. This is where the third-party risk management, this is where our strategy and our approach are the most important. Just answering the question, who is responsible, is a step in the right direction. Now, Subbiah, you and I are dealing with this every day, but for the audience and everybody watching, tell me a little bit about why you're seeing this gray area, this confusion, to be responsible or not to be responsible. Subbiah, why is this happening?
That's a great question, Andy. So typically what happens is that people assume that, today, let's say you're running an application in on-prem, right? What happens? The guy or girl which is responsible for the application, they take care of the application. For backup, they typically have their IT team. They call the IT team, hey, I'm running this production, running a database, running an application. Can you protect it? An IT team does a great job of protecting it. When they went to the cloud, they thought, magically all the problem went away. Now, once I go to the cloud provider take care. The good thing is that I'll tell you, as all of us know, the cloud SaaS vendors do take responsibility. They do make sure the application is highly available. They do make sure they have the copies of the application, all that stuff. One thing people have to put themselves in the shoes and think about it is that from a SaaS vendor, they're not tracking your data. At the end of the day, data is your responsibility. The reason is, it's very simple. For example, when you add a bunch of data, they think it's your data, you give it to me, I'll keep it and give it back to you. When you delete some data, they say, oh, you decided to delete, it's okay. I will delete it and tell you it's deleted. From their perspective, they don't know what you are intending to do, right? That's one of the reasons when a bad actor comes in and tries to delete stuff, they'll say, okay, I'll delete all that stuff, right? They don't know, SaaS vendor cannot distinguish between a good delete and a bad delete, a good update and a bad update. All that is only known to the person who owns the data. That's one of the reasons there's a shared responsibility model here, right? The application provider says, I will make sure your infrastructure is up, the application is up. Absolutely, I will do a good job and make sure in case something bad happens to my infrastructure, I'll get you the data back. But if you make some changes, or if somebody on your behalf or somebody pretending to be on your behalf deletes something, please, you have to take responsibility. That's why it's a shared responsibility. To your point, what you said, Andy, so many times your customers say, oh, I go to the cloud, it's all taken care. No, guys, it's not taken care. It's your responsibility. Please do take care of it. We strongly encourage every customer to go back to every application and do it. Don't just have to believe us. Go look at your contracts. The vendors clearly tell you it's your responsibility. And that is something we encourage people to do.
But Subbiah, it's actually, you and I talk about this all the time. It's not that hard to forget about your responsibility. And as you mentioned, when you have lived in a world where you are hosting something, server or data center yourself, you are used to having this top of mind. I have to go do my patching. I have to maintain this. Do I have enough storage? Is access control okay? Because why? You're responsible for recovering that from an outage. You're responsible for recovering from any scenario and maintaining that infrastructure. You're paying for it. You're managing it. It's your job. But all of a sudden, you have this amazing cloud service where I can spin up compute, storage, or a business application and just start using it. It's very easy to fall into the trap and say, well, it's their problem. They're hosting it for me. Why am I responsible for this? Now, Subbiah, you're tired of my very dumb analogy here, but it's like a parking garage. When you go to a parking garage, what do you expect? Well, I have to be able to enter the garage, I can park, I can pay, the lights are on, I'm gonna be safe, and that when I come back from dinner or from the bar, that I know that the car is there and I can leave. But what if you leave your laptop inside the car and your window's open, or somebody scratches it, or somebody hits it and you don't have insurance? What does the garage say? Say, we take no liability for any incident or impact on your vehicle. Cloud and SaaS, it's the same thing. We're going to give you a service. You're going to pay. We're going to deliver on what we promised. We are responsible for uptime for the 5 nines. But if your password is password, or you simply delete things and have no backups, then it's your responsibility. And this is where we're seeing the massive gap in the industry from the perspective of, what am I actually responsible for? This is where we see successful attacks. This is where we see disruption. This is where we see a lot of the risk. Now, Subbiah, there's so many people watching this video right now. They're running an IT organization. They have a million priorities. They're being told to shorten their budget. They're being told to consolidate their tech stack, but to also drive revenue and to enable the team. What can you do to prepare yourself? What can you do to actually make sure that your organization is resilient, but do it in a way that makes sense for you too? What would you recommend?
That's a great question, Andy, because some of you listening probably thinking, all this data is great. I can throw out the numbers, but what's the point, right? And the simple things which we tell people are, your organization is looking up to you to keep your organization data safe, right? That's what you are thinking about day in and day out, and how do you keep your organization safe? The first thing in any process of keeping it safe is first knowing what to do. Please read a survey. It'll give you, not just you, people like you, what are other people worried about? Or what are they thinking about, right? And allows you to benchmark yourself to what the industry is. That's number one. The first, do that. Second thing I'll strongly encourage people to do is that first get to know what you actually have. You're probably wondering, what do you mean? I already know what I have. As much as people think they know all their services, what they have, there's lots of blind sites. And as one of our CISO's friends tells us all the time, you're only as good as what you know, right? So you have to know what you actually have. Your risk is, you can manage your risk only for what you know. The first thing is, please get to see our entire infrastructure. And that's where we recommend people doing an inventory of your entire estate. There are simple tools like what are rgraph, which is at no cost. You can run it and tells you your entire data landscape. That's a second thing. Do that. And third thing, prioritize what's critical to your business. At a minimum, I tell people these days, 3 things. I said, first, please make your identity is secure. Sounds simple, but it's very critical because, as we said, that's your keys to your kingdom. First one. Second thing, you as an organization have your intellectual property. At the end of the day, today, data is value, right? It's very, very important. Please do protect your IP. It could be in any of the tools, whatever your tool is, wherever you keep your IP. It could be in your web servers, it could be in your Confluences, it could be in your GitLab and GitHub, but protect that. And the last thing, at the end of the day, you make money from your customers. You got to help your customers. That's your CRMs. Please protect it. Those are the simple things I tell them, the 3 simple rules. That's there. Obviously, there's a lot more to protect, but please start there and then do that. That's what I probably would recommend to people.
Subbiah, thank you so much for your insights. For a quick recap for everybody watching, read the report, hear from your peers. The team at HYCU, our product experts, our engineers, we're here to help you provide a free risk assessment. Have a conversation with us. We'll be able to identify what is really important to protect, what is not, what are the things that you can do to also make sure that this is fully automated. So we want to thank you and make sure to read the State of SaaS Resilience Report.